All right, so we're talking about the effect that we each have on people and our influence. And, one of the things that I want you to think about is I want you to think about your most fun friend, the person you enjoy being around the most. When I was in high school, I had a good group of friends. My friend Christian, Tyler, Jake. There are so many others that I really enjoyed being around. We would joke, we would have a blast, we would just laugh at the most ridiculous things, but we would all really have a huge impact on each other. We helped each other get through some really difficult times, and we, just really bonded during that phase of our life, and we're still really close now. And so I want you to think of your most fun friend, or the friend that you enjoy being around the most. And just don't just point to anybody, just like picture that person in your mind. Okay, you got it? Okay, good. So I'm guessing that you probably have a friend that, has had a huge impact on your life or the people around them. And I've got a few qualities that, a lot of us look for in that kind of a person. So a person who's fun to be around. Everybody wants to hang out with them. That's a big one. They're so nice, they literally make you want to be a nicer person. Have you ever been around someone like that? Or they work so hard that, their teammates or the people that they're working with also work harder because they can feel that energy going straight into them, that they know that they've got to step up their game. Or maybe you only know someone who's the opposite of that. They're so mean to other people that they make everyone else feel like they're in a worse mood, or that they've got to be mean as well, or that they're always so ticked off, or that they're always so angry that they bring down the mood just everywhere they go. Or they're so loud that you have to kind of like talk over them all the time because they're constantly shouting, right? You might know someone who's the opposite of what you would say is a good influence. And so whether it's a good thing or a not so good thing, here's what we know is true. Everybody that has a significant effect on the people around them, they don't really think about it, right? They don't really realize how much people are watching them. They don't think about the fact that other people are looking at how they react and what they are doing, okay? So that's what makes this series that we're going into so interesting and a little bit tricky. And so for the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about that effect that you have on other people. And in other words, we're talking about your influence on others. Okay? So for that, influence is an obvious thing to a lot of us, but not in the way that we expect. We see other people's influence on people, but we have a hard time recognizing our own influence on others. And so some of you might say, I don't affect anybody, I don't impact anyone or influence anyone. That I'm at zero. I never affect anybody. And some of you may say, hey, I know for a fact that I've definitely affected other people. And that may be for the positive or for the negative. And you can do a little bit of a self-evaluation there. Do I make a positive impact on people or a negative impact on people? But either way, it's sometimes difficult for us to identify that in our own life. So that's totally normal. And either way, the truth is this. No matter what you and I think about our influence, it is possible and even, probable that we don't realize how much of an effect we have. So even if you know you have an effect on someone, you probably still don't even realize how much of one you have, the scale of it. So we're going to look at someone who was used and they had a huge impact on everybody around them, okay? So we're going to be here in John 6, and I'm going to start reading this, but I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory here. So Jesus, he had been traveling around doing ministry for about 3 years right now. And the crowds, they almost always were following Jesus. And it's really because they had heard about Jesus and all the miracles he had been doing and this effect that he had had, right? So the influence that Jesus had was really, really noticeable. And so people were following him constantly. Sometimes I think about this and I'm like, man, that would be really, really aggravating to have a ton of people, always hundreds and hundreds of people following you no matter where you went. But it was just because they knew how much influence Jesus had, and they were interested in that. So, John 6, right here, I'm going to start reading it. So, sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee. And they say that that's the Sea of Tiberias, in case you were wondering. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs that he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up onto the mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near, and when Jesus looked and saw a great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip was one of the disciples, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already knew in mind what he was going to do, which I love that that's written right there. He asks Philip this question of like, where are we going to get the bread? But in reality, Jesus was just asking Philip this question to see what Philip's faith was and what Philip's response would be. So, the crowd was gathered. They wanted to see a great miracle worker. And what does Jesus do? He asks Philip, what are we going to do? And this is Philip's answer. He says, it would take more than half a year's wages or half a year's earnings to buy enough bread for each one to have even a bite. That's John 6:7. So in other words, what Philip is saying is, are you kidding me right now? What are you talking about? What do you mean, what are we going to do to feed everybody here? There's no way that we can provide for this many people. I mean, he came towards Jesus with this attitude of, why are you even asking me this question? It doesn't make any sense. So he was saying, we don't just have that cash just laying around. How are we going to feed these people? So right here in John 6:8-9, it says, another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. He said, here's a boy with small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? And that's when Jesus went to work. All right, so that's John 6:10-14. So right there, Jesus starts dividing all of this food out, and it just keeps coming, right? He's breaking the bread, and he's breaking the fish up, and he keeps giving it out and giving it out until everybody is fed. And in fact, everybody got fed, and there were leftovers from just this small meal from this boy. So when we look at this, we say, okay, who had the biggest impact? Who in this story had the biggest impact? And the quick answer is to say, well, Jesus had the biggest impact, and that's very true. Jesus did have the biggest impact. But when we're looking at the other people, do we say the disciples had the next biggest impact? Well, they were, impactful because they were with Jesus. It was kind of an automatic thing. The people who had followed said, well, those are his disciples. They already have a big impact, and they were watching them. But the real surprise here was this boy with this meal. He had a huge impact just because he was willing to give something to Jesus to watch what Jesus did with it. Okay? It was his willingness to use what he had that made him influential. Jesus wasn't looking for any of that. The only thing that mattered was that the boy brought that forward. He brought it to him, and that was enough. Because ultimately, this was about the power of Jesus. This wasn't really about, hey, how are we going to feed the people? That was part of it. But what was really being demonstrated here was, how can Jesus show his power to everybody here by taking something from someone that they were willing to give and turning it into something absolutely amazing, okay? So when we look at this story, we can kind of parallel it to our own lives, right? What are we willing to bring to Jesus? What are we willing to say in our lives, hey, this is a gift that I have, or this is something in my life, and I'm willing to give it to you, Jesus, to let you use it and use me to make an impact on the others around me. So when it comes to you affecting the world around you, It's all about you being willing to just show up and offer what you have. But before that's possible, you have to recognize the fact that you have more influence and more effect on people than you even realize. You don't even think about it. So imagine this little boy sitting here watching Jesus teach, and think about if that boy had had the thought, well, all I've got is this amount of food. I've got a few fish and some bread. That's really not anything. That's not going to do anything, right? How different the story would be, right? Because if the boy didn't realize, like, hey, this is all I've got, but I'm willing to bring it to you, the story would have been completely different, all right? So having an impact on people isn't about doing more or having more or knowing more people or having a better circle that is more influential. It's looking and saying, what can God do with what I have? What can God make happen from what I'm willing to give? Okay? So as you think about it, here are a few steps to consider. All right? Identify the who. Who do you have an impact on? Who is in that circle that they might view you in a way that you can have an impact on them. Then you can identify the need, which is what Jesus did. Identify the need of what people need. What do they need to see? What are you willing to give and to show? And then you can identify what you can do about it. What can you offer? And how Jesus can take what you offer and turn it into something absolutely incredible. So, before I'm done with the lesson here, I want you to think about that person in your life. We mentioned it at the very beginning, right? I wanted you to think about someone who you felt like had a huge influence on your life or that you just enjoy being around. I want you to think of that person, and I want you to think about, what is it about that person that allowed them to have such a huge impact on you? How did they influence your life? How did they impact you for the good? And in the same way that others have had an effect on you, you have that same ability right now. You have that ability to have an effect on others. And that's why we, take for example, that's why we have small groups, and I hope soon that we're able to meet in person. But small groups are a way that we can be with each other and we can have these great conversations and have an impact on each other's lives. So think about the you effect. Think about how Jesus can take something that you have and turn it into something amazing, just like this boy who gave his small meal. Okay? So, we've started a new series. What this means is that we've also started a new devotion series. I've already added the link here on the Instagram page. If you want to go to the Instagram page, click on the link in the bio. You will see a thing that says join our current devotion series, and it'll take you straight to the Bible app. If you haven't downloaded that yet, definitely do it. We're doing devotions. Our last series, we had several of us that got all the way through the devotion and didn't miss a day, and y'all are just so awesome for doing that. I'm so proud of each of you that even if you didn't get every day, you still were in your Bible and you were reading for a lot of the week. So I'm super proud of you guys for doing that, and I hope that you'll join this next one. It's completely about the effect that we have on others and how we can use that to God's glory and allow Him to use us. So I miss you guys. I'm hoping that we can meet soon in person, maybe outside if it ever stops raining. But I will let you know about that soon. And yeah, that's what I got tonight. And that's pretty much it. I don't know what else to say other than that. I'm still not used to teaching to a camera. Also, I see Cameron said, I wonder how many pizzas you could make with that bread. That's a good question. I don't know that I have it in a study Bible anywhere, but probably quite a few pizzas, especially if Jesus was the one making it. So yeah. All right, guys. I will see you later, and hopefully in person. I'll let you know something. See y'all.